should have remembered.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Partners in Crime. I'm Shawna.
And I'm Annie.
In this episode we meet my dad.
And I'm special guest Dawn Sparrow.
Yes, as we mentioned last week, we have a special guest this week. This is Annie's dad, my brother, and as I think I've mentioned...
Move over, you're not in the shot.
Okay. We used to watch Law and Order Criminal Intent, like right from the air date, so...
They're the OGs.
Yeah, and now Annie's discovered the show. And how this podcast works is we go through our top 20 episodes. So we are still in season 2, and this week's episode is The Pilgrim. And this was on my top 10, not on your top 10. So maybe we'll get our special guest to just tell us a little bit about kind of a plot summary of what happens in The Pilgrim.
So The Pilgrim is a very high stakes episode where there is a murder, and then that's what they're brought in for, is a kind of a more typical murder story, but it has a larger overarching terrorism fear. And so because of their investigation into this individual murder, which is their homicide detectives or major case homicide detectives, they then uncover kind of a larger conspiracy and work with the FBI. So the entire episode has I guess I'm evaluating, I'm not summarizing. So a murder of a woman leads them down kind of a rabbit trail of connections to a sleeper cell of, in this case, Islamic terrorists, and then they have to prevent a large-scale domestic terrorism attack, and they catch one of the sleeper cell agents, and then have to sort of break him and get information that they can from him, and they actually don't get all the information. They get information that helps them with their case on the murder charge, but really not that much that leads them to another to the terrorist cell. But so that's basically the plot of it. Is in investigating this murder, they uncover also a conspiracy for a terror attack.
Yes.
Well put.
And who plays the sleeper cell agent? His name is Ethan Edwards, and he is played by...
Ryder Strong. He's a strong actor. Of course, we grew up watching him growing up in front of our eyes, really, on Boy Meets World. He was sort of the Fonzie character, the tough street kid who was friends with the Richie Cunningham character of Eric Matthews. Hey, wait a minute. Matthews. And so it was a kind of stunt casting to have him play a very tortured, serious role, and he did it very ably, I thought.
Yeah. And so what's the character's kind of backstory? How did he get involved in this terrorist attack?
So he's kind of a seeker, kind of a spiritual seeker with a very science-minded sort of man of faith, man of science relationship with his father. And but he always wanted to connect to something larger than himself, particularly in times of crisis in his life, which Goran was able to identify and then eventually empathize with. So then in his search for kind of something larger or a faith life, he connected with Islam, but then it was that same seeker, that same sort of seeking the truth or seeking the depth of his religion that led him, led the team to uncovering part of this mystery, because as they accurately put in the show, acts of domestic terrorism are incompatible with a life of faith, and in this case it was Islamic faith, and that was sort of the door opening that Goran could squeeze through to kind of go, this is to get him to help, to cooperate.
Yes. And as often happens on the show, there was a bit of a trick to sort of bait the suspect, I guess. And so what is the trick that they use this time to even sort of catch him in the first place?
I'm trying to remember now.
You can say, Annie.
Yeah. No, go.
No, I don't remember well enough. So, do you remember?
So they're trying to find out more about him. So they go to his parents' house, and this is where they learn, his dad was sort of not supportive of him, pursuing faith, more of the science-minded. He's clearly closer to his mother. And so, Annie, so what do they do?
They say that his mom had a heart attack,
A
or
massive
something?
heart attack, yeah.
And
so
that
it's on the
she
news.
might not be okay. And so it's on the news, and he's obviously upset about it. So that's what they say. They say you tell us something, and we'll tell you how your mom's doing, without him knowing that
she's fine. Yeah,
she's fine.
And how they locate him is after that news report, he releases a streaming video kind of explaining his actions. And I thought this was kind of cool how they then use that to locate him, because the victim actually met the perpetrator on this website called Singular Singles, which turns up again on other episodes of CI. And so they managed to sort of, even from I guess the signature of the streaming video, figure out where it was broadcast from. And so that's actually how they find him.
They found a dating profile, and then they tracked that individual down, and then that's where they were holed up.
Yeah. And then it's a little bit different than the normal format, because so much of the show is the interrogation scene and trying to...
That's true. Yeah. He's really tough to crack.
He's very tough to crack. But how do they ultimately do it?
Well, mostly just kind of manipulating him into saying this isn't what faith is about. There's no reason to kill for God or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I love the interrogation tactics, but it was such a contrast this episode because of the scale of the investigation. There were sort of FBI people and national security people involved, taking very sort of typical tactics, and very large. And so there's a great scene in this episode where an FBI agent is sort of speaking very broadly and saying he's a traitor and going very nationalistic. And Goran is sort of symbolically, he's literally in the corner. He's in the darkness, just sort of and then he points out, he's well, this is very conceptual. This is very big picture. Yeah. And then, as he often does, he shrinks it down and it goes for the little picture, which is a great tactic, making it more personal and smaller, and then individualist, and which then they find their opening. And sort of touching back to the things they learned during the search, and setting up for what is Goran's sort of mastery, which is to make anyone feel seen and understood.
Right. Yeah. And so how they kind of do break him. So at the murder scene, there's the woman that lives there. Her parents are coming to visit her. She doesn't pick them up at the airport. They get to the apartment. There's kind of signs of a struggle. She's missing, and in the bedroom, someone has written
on the curtain.
On the curtain in Arabic, and even Goran doesn't know. He knows it's the language, but he can't read it and doesn't know where it's from. So it's a bit of a surprise. But it actually is from Song of Songs or Song of Solomon, and it kind of talks about night after night I have sought my true love, and I've called for him and he won't answer me. So that's kind of Goran's discovery is, like we talked about, this Ethan has been searching for God and searching for this connection with God. And that's why he wrote that. It wasn't by mistake, is that he feels like he's crying out to God and no longer has that connection. Because he has strayed so far.
But that's from the Bible, right? The Christian Bible?
Well, it's Abrahamic text, so it's in all three religions. Okay. So it's in the Christian religion, it's in the Torah.
I was wondering there.
Yeah.
But it is very incongruous with the typical jihadi, rah-rah sort of language. It was a little more tortured, and immediately the poetry of it triggers something in Goran where he goes, this is someone who's conflicted, and he can recognize that just from, because it doesn't fit with the rest of the scene.
Yeah. Right. And everything that we hear about this Ethan, his mom talks about what a moral person he is, that, he was disturbed by what happened at 9/11.
Which must have been recent because it came out in 2000.
Yeah, the shadows of 9/11 all through the episode, and in interesting ways. I think that if this had been made more modernly, I think there wouldn't be maybe such a. I think Islamic terrorism has kind of been perhaps overplayed in the media. So then nowadays, I think they would have found a different angle. Yeah. The other thing I found interesting was that it was Goran, who's kind of the point of view character. He's kind of the one we cheer for, who was kind of pushing for that to be the angle. Like he was the one who saw it, whereas Captain Deakins was always soft pedaling that.
Deakins just wants to get it off his desk all the time.
Sure, but he was very quick to sort of say, like, oh, it could be this, it could be just a nut, and was downplaying the terrorism angle, which I think today, if this were made, it would be the inverse, where it would be, from the top down, they'd be going like, this could be terrorism, and it would be perhaps Goran going, no, I don't think it's this. So, so that alone, I felt was interesting.
Yeah.
This is not relevant to the episode, but it did come up recently, because I told Dad that when I was at my dentist appointment, I couldn't see the TV because I was being operated on, but I kept hearing the dun-dun noise, and he said it was the chung, like, what'd you say?
Cha-chunk. It's correctly called cha-chunk.
No one calls it that. It's dun-dun.
Entertainment Weekly calls it cha-chunk, and I go by Entertainment Weekly.
There is, though, I will point out, the Dun-Dun Diner in New York. It's the...
Well, they can have it. I will.
Everyone calls it dun-dun.
I guess it's my own personal jihad.
Yeah.
And I will, and my own cause I will die for, is calling it cha-chunk. But...
So yes, that is how they break him. And it's interesting because, they're talking about giving him truth serum. And Carver's like, look, like, we're out of options. We don't have any leverage. And then Goran's like, well, we have his sense of morality, and so that is how they get him. And so he doesn't fully cooperate, but he does tell them where to find the body of their murder victim. And so they find her. She's in this boiler room. And then it's Eames that finds boot prints.
Yeah.
And and then it all falls into place. So what do they discover?
Well, they're for veterans, or like...
They're army
military.
issue.
They're army issue, yes.
And they're new, so... And then Goran realizes that there was this slip of paper. They didn't know what it meant, but it said, like, 1/55 at 31.
Yeah.
And they had no idea what that meant, but then he realized, it has to be at the Veterans Day.
Yeah. It was a regiment number and then a street number.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing about that was that in his questioning of he's a very strong actor, Ryder Strong, he let slip that they would never kill civilians, and then also that was where I think his moment of doubt came from, was because they had the woman whose murder they were investigating was essentially an innocent in this storyline, and that was incongruous to him. That caused his schism, and so then through Eames, Goran, as sort of that Watson Holmes springboard, he goes, oh, that's what he meant by we would never kill civilians. So then they are targeting Gulf War veterans, which was in the predominantly Islamic part of the world.
Yeah, so that's the 155 regiment. Mm-hmm. So now they think, okay, so we know where he's going to be. So they've got all of these agents. They've got snipers on the roof. They're looking for this Jorge, I guess it is. And so...
Does he say a single word all of the episode? I don't think he does.
He does, because he pays for her when she doesn't have to. Yeah.
Right.
So anyways, then we see him walking down the street, very determined. We know that he's got the vest on, the suicide vest.
And like a button in his pocket.
Yeah. And then Goran just walks right up to him and is like walking next to him. Goran actually does seem a little bit nervous, and he's trying to chat him up. Asking, oh, like, do you want a cigarette? Like, I quit, but, being back in uniform kind of plays with my mind. And the guy's just ignoring him. And then Goran says, do you have a light? And so he takes his hand out of his pocket. And so his hand is free. And then Goran, like, tries to take him down. And it's
the worst moment ever. Like,
it's uncharacteristically, like, high suspense and action.
Yeah, it's too scary.
And so what happens?
Well, then, they start fighting, and, it's a bad fight. Like, it's a bad... Yeah. They're both very strong. Like, they're probably equal in strength, and there's, like, knocking of heads and stuff. And all the while, Eames is trying to shoot the guy, but Goran is so close that if
Yeah.
she shoots, she's going to hit
Well,
him.
and he's reaching for the button, right?
Right.
And so that's what they're struggling over. And at one point, he actually bites Goran.
Ah!
in the
It's
arm.
too much. It's like that. I felt it. I felt it through the screen.
Yeah, and I feel like that, and that's perhaps why, I mean, when I was asked what episode I'd want to take on for this podcast, that why I chose this one was because, I mean, it was a great episode altogether, but because of that final scene, it goes to what I think is a recurring theme in Criminal Intent, which is Goran having something akin to a suicidal tendencies, to self-risk tendencies, where anybody in the FBI, anybody in the SWAT team, anybody could have been the person who stood next to this suicide bomber with a, anticoagulant, bomb. So it's like, he'll certainly die if that bomb is detonated. But Goran insists that it's him. He puts himself in the path of danger. That's where he's the most comfortable and self-sacrificing. And so, and he's the one, who's right next to him. And you sort of feel like once that happens, and as a viewer, the suspense is ratcheted up. But it seemed like even for Goran, it was like once he was there, as nervous as he seemed, it seemed like he's like, this is where I need to be. And of course, he's the one to make the sacrifice play. And another symbol of that was the biting scene where it really almost didn't deter him. He's screaming in pain, but he doesn't waver. He continues to fight, and it's that sort of duality of like the sacrifice is his own, the pain is his own, and he'll sacrifice himself for justice, to save others. And it was such, and I mean, in an episode about faith, there's no kind of more powerful metaphor than you could have than that sacrificing oneself for the greater good, for others.
Yeah, and for me, this episode really kind of introduced the idea of like being on a mission from God, right? Like that's Goran's mission. And another example of that is the first podcast we did was about the episode called The Phantom, and that's another really good example of him putting himself literally in front of a gun,
Yes.
trying to save these children and even save the suspect himself, right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
And and I mean the episode leans pretty heavily into that, and even again with the questioning of Ryder Strong, where it's like, you could almost extrapolate further that it's like it is God's will that this terrorist attack be foiled, because he's in that seat, because he's been arrested, because so he can't divine, Ryder Strong's character can't divine the will of God in this jihadist movement anymore. He's muddled, it's confusing, but he's sort of like, oh, maybe I can see God in this in this moment and in these actions. And so that's a recurring theme of God's will.
Yes.
And we hope and of course Eames has the classic final line.
So we'll save that for
Oh,
our
okay.
segment.
All right.
But
I don't
yeah.
know.
But no, it's true.
We haven't released the podcast yet, so he doesn't know any of our segments.
But definitely, yes, there is that theme of God's will. And just like their discussions in the interrogation room are really interesting, like at a very high level of sort of
discourse.
and doubts and faith and
Pretty deep.
very deep. And like at one point Ames is like, well, why do you have to kill other people? Like, fine, you're willing to sacrifice yourself for this mission, so what about people that set themselves on fire to make a point? Why do you have to take anyone down with you? And he does not have a good answer.
Yes, that muddies his message in a way that they mentioned Buddhist monks who would self-immolate, and with the Vietnam War, where no one misunderstood that as vengeance or something other than the message that they wanted, the self-sacrificing message that they wanted to send.
And I think too, I appreciate the show being pretty balanced, because at that time there was probably a lot of animosity towards Muslims in general, but they're very careful to make the point, that Goran says, I've read the Quran, I was trying to impress this Muslim woman, and it's not in here, the...
Do you think that's true, though? That he...
Oh, probably.
read it for that?
I could see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think Goran's a bit of a seeker himself, really.
Has phases of knowledge and just sort of wants a grounding, particularly as, we know he had that military history, so it
so it
fits
fits with his story, but that he, makes the point. When you actually read the Quran, it's like a peaceful religion and doesn't endorse that kind of violence. So yeah, like very, very dramatic ending. And then I don't know if we did say what happens.
So, yeah, he gets shot in the head.
Finally, as a sniper has a clear lane as they're grappling, and sort of from on high, he is struck down.
Yeah,
and it's and then they're left sort of shell shocked and yeah.
And they walk away, and Eames says, "God's will," and Gordon says, "Let's hope so." So yeah, very dramatic, very high stakes. Really, really good episode.
Yeah, and I did want to address the sort of the drama was sort of ratcheted up, and even the format where it did seem like a higher scale, and generally I don't appreciate them kind of messing with the format. I mean, later seasons they tinker and stuff in ways that I felt made the show more like CSI and less like itself.
Made you feel weird inside?
It made me feel kind of weird inside, if I'm being honest, which this podcast demands. I think my audience.
Yeah.
Our audience demands, but generally I don't like messing with the format. But in this episode, it did feel that scale felt appropriate. Even in the final scenes where they're at the parade, there's a neck breaking zoom on the as they're going through the parade. They zoom in on the suspect, and it's and it's really kind of like a camera move we've never seen
like
on the
a
show.
movie. It's like a movie.
It was very filmic, and so as much as I'm kind of like that's incongruous with the rest of the show, it felt worthy because it was such an important episode, and certainly the scale of it was and the stakes and the action were out of character, but in a pleasing way.
Yeah, in a pleasing way, in a way that we will allow.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and
it's weird and good, not weird and bad. Weird and good.
And speaking of kind of the rules of the show or the format, another rule, of course, is we don't. There's not a lot of focus on their personal lives, but we do get a couple little tidbits. I believe this is the first time we learn that Gordon's mother was a librarian. Mm-hmm. And that becomes important later on in the show. Mm-hmm. And we learn that Gordon has a treadmill. So what do you what do you think about that?
What am I supposed to think about that?
Well, I just find it interesting because he is in pretty good shape, and he is they're mostly working from behind a desk, but this is an example when we actually see Gordon does need to be strong, not just in his struggle with the guy at the end, but even there's a point where Ryder Strong kind of shrugs him off, and then he grabs his arm and kind of bangs it on. Yeah,
I just feel bad for. I mean, obviously, Eames and Carver and Deakins are used to him being loud in the interrogation room, but I always feel bad for the lawyers because they must be like, what is happening? It's so loud.
And that was a unique situation because as a domestic terrorist, Ryder Strong's character had no rights in that situation, so there was no advocate for him. There was no one saying he's not talking and this kind of thing. So, which was again a little bit against the format, the typical format, but and also allowed it to that extended interrogation, which they gave ample evidence of eye drops and loosening the tie and all these sort of overboard on this is going on a long time.
I love that scene because it's so
it's just so telegraph that that's what they're telling you, but the lawyers don't usually do much anyway in the interrogation room. I find that's a problem with the show, that the lawyers just sort of sit there and just
It was interesting also that when they raided the safe house, that Captain Deakins was there in gear,
in
so
action. It
kind of showed that scale and that he was sort of wanted that more personal touch, or it was just a way to get him in the episode maybe, but it was that seemed out of the ordinary.
It was out of the ordinary, so lots of kind of different things, highly irregular. And then I just also wanted to observe, when we see Carver at number 1 Police Plaza, so he's got to always have the visitor badge.
Why do you say number 1? It's just one Police Plaza.
Sorry. Yeah. But did you notice he's often drinking, they must have good coffee, because he's always got a mug of coffee, but it's out of a mug.
Yes, he loves his mugs.
The detectives always just use those paper blue cups, so... Yeah.
That is interesting. Yeah, and I think it's probably an actor choice. There's a few little character moments they do with Carver, same as the fedoras. And
Yeah.
he's always
And
very
like
bespoke.
the
and,
suspenders.
yes, yeah, and it's but I do find that the mug connotes a sort of relaxed or a comfortable feel, even though he is a visitor.
Yeah. All right, so that's the episode. I think we're ready to move into our segments. And so one of our segments we like to do on the show is we call it the Overacting Emmy, because quite often you just get some really wonderful
And
overacting.
so, like, yeah, just for Dad, just so you know, like, it's not, like, crazy overacting, but it's, like, one thing that just, like, kind of puts it over.
Yeah.
Crosses the line, and then it's considered overacting, and you just have to say, get this guy his Emmy.
Yeah. And it's not, I mean, because there are some truly great performances, but these Emmys go to the overacting. So I didn't actually find today's episode really a lot of overacting, but who gets the Emmy?
Probably, like, the FBI agent.
Yeah.
He's pretty overacting.
It was.
I would also like to mention that scene of, like, the night, because it's, like, it's also a weird shot. I think they're trying something new there.
To try to seem like nighttime interrogation.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like it like swoops. It's weird.
I felt like the FBI agent was very well cast in the way that he sort of was like sort of nondescript. You know, the close cropped hair, sort of balding, like but undistinctive. But robotic, you know, like tall and imposing, but kind of bland. That's very interesting. I did, my favorite moment with the FBI agent was when Goran, I found his energy, again, I'm complimenting D'Onofrio on acting, but was so kind of apologetic, where he was like, of course you must have noticed, like where he pointed out the sticky tape on the wall that showed that there had been a backdrop there for sort of a video, statement video, and where he was like, oh, this is what this was, and clearly the FBI agent did not pick up on it, but then he was so charitable, and was like, well, you know that this means this,
right?
So it was kind of an interesting dynamic where, and then also again the shadows of 9/11, where the FBI were sort of impotent, where they wouldn't do anything without the protection or advisement of Homeland Security, which is a national office, whereas the FBI used to be sort of, certainly a little more formidable.
Well, and it was kind of nice that they're actually cooperating, like the agencies, because sometimes on the show there's a real power struggle for jurisdiction. Yeah. So I think just because it was so important, they were trying to cooperate.
Mm-hmm. If I can mention maybe some overacting, it would be the drunken phone call at the beginning of the episode in the cold open, where it was sort of the put upon girlfriend of Jihad Johnny or whatever, and her drunken phone message was maybe a little broad, maybe a little bit.
Yes, you're right.
And I do feel bad for the actress, where there were, maybe I shouldn't even get into this, but there were some hints there where it was like. About that hinted toward them being sleeper cell agents, where they were taking only the minimum classes to keep their visas,
right? And
then they also mentioned like a girlfriend who would put up with a lot, which seemed to be almost directed about her appearance, which I felt bad for that actress.
Yeah, no, that's true. That did really come across. And then another segment we call it the Goran moment, and this is really like the moment that kind of exemplifies Goran's unique character and abilities, and usually there's lots to choose from. So what was your Goran moment this episode?
There's a lot of Goran moments in that one. I don't know, probably why does he always have to be in character? Why does he always have to be in a character? So that was kind of when he was walking beside the guy and asking for
he really
a smoke. What is his problem? It was
very deep cover of I went through all this and I'm this and I'm it was very. I'm gonna jump in and steal Shawna's, which is I think that the strong Goran moment was actually you go ahead.
You go ahead.
I lost my train of thought.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna
it might. I mean, of course, I always love how he breaks them, and I loved kind of his analysis of, Song of Solomon and figuring that out. And of course, I want everyone to believe in God. And so I just like any time that there's any hint that, like, the characters believe in God. And I liked when Goran said, and there's nothing bigger than God. But I would also have to pick out so when they first meet Ethan, he's actually in a classroom.
So now I remember it, and I should have sold it.
So you go ahead, because I already did one.
No, well, it is, of course, the moment related to where we learn he works out, but where Ethan mentions, as he mentions this famous library in Egypt, that only a person who had been there could describe in the detail that Ethan does. Ethan, trying to hide his own personal knowledge, says, "Oh, well, I'm one of 5 people who read, the National Smithsonian magazine," and then Goran's like, six of us, which again is like, first of all, it's Goran's move of, we are related, we are, that we are similar, you're seen, you're understood, but then he also similarly has that defensive reaction of like, it's a perfect size for my for my treadmill, because
it is ridiculous that he
well, I love when he's like going back to the article and like, I don't remember them saying anything about smoke detectors, and then Eames is like, you really do, like, you actually did read that article, and then he's like, oh, it's a perfect size for my treadmill. So,
but also that, like, even when he's working his body, he has to be stimulating his mind, like that. It's like, not many people read on treadmills. I sure can't. But,
so then I was thinking, so he probably just walks on the treadmill, because it's very hard to like read and run. But that's something I just kind of love, the dynamic with him and Eames. That Eames is always a little bit annoyed, right, that he knows so much, and So I would say that is my Goran moment. Any other Goran moments come to mind?
No.
I mean, it is, I bet you that Vincent D'Onofrio was very excited for the action scene, because he got to do something a bit different. And I think it could be a Goran moment just in what you talk about. I hadn't actually thought about that before, about, does Goran have maybe a suicidal tendency?
I think we should maybe make that part of the podcast, because it comes up a lot.
Yeah.
No, that's why I wanted to choose this one, and it's funny that you mentioned Phantom, because that's one of my other big examples. Is the very first thing he does is put himself right in the path where, if any harm is coming, it's to him. Which, I mean, and we see that in later seasons and even episodes I don't love. He's willing to put his own life and liberty at risk. Perhaps to an excessive degree that it goes beyond maybe even the demands of the case.
Yes.
Where it's kind of like, which again I think betrays a certain level of, I don't want to say self-loathing, but maybe of, that he
self-uncertainty.
Yeah, that he would rather that he's okay with perishing. That he has that sort of tendency. Death wish.
Yeah, and it's maybe a bit of a nod to Sherlock Holmes as well, like that he kind of had no life outside of, solving the puzzle. But I was sort of thinking about this treadmill thing. It's interesting because I think Goran is just sort of doing better at the beginning of the show, like the first few seasons. Yeah. He seems to have, an active social life. He's taking care of himself.
He's shaven, generally.
Yeah, and we really see him kind of deteriorate as the show goes on. And
that also kind of reminds me of the Sherlock Holmes, Jeremy Brett performance.
Yeah.
That's a parallel I noticed.
Yeah. Yeah, and where it just becomes almost this consuming mission, so. And then let's get to the Eames one-liner.
Also known as Annie Complains for a good second. And we have my framed photo of Eames that I keep
Yeah, this will be a substitute for the art.
Right. No, I have art.
Oh, you have art. Okay. Go show the picture though. I don't know if everyone.
Yeah, this is the picture. Anyways, I'm mad that Eames was so
sidelined.
Yes.
I don't think she was.
No, she was.
In this
no,
episode.
she was. No, she was.
I know that's something the actress speaks about sometimes as a challenge. I remember her saying that as much as she loved the role and felt like it was enough, then when she watched later seasons where there were other partners, where it was Logan and Barrick or whatever it was, and that she found those episodes difficult to watch because she felt like the other actresses had a more equal footing.
I'm mad. I'm disturbed. It's not okay, and
Are you mad that I mentioned there were other partners?
yes,
But this is a frequent complaint of Annie. That,
yeah, this happens every podcast, and it's going to happen until it changes.
But I feel like Eames in this episode, she's the one that finds the
Yes.
blueprints.
Sure,
she's
but-
kind of got the gun at the end. And she makes some really good points in the interrogation. It's not just all Goran doing all the talking.
She is crucial, and it's not just reaction shots. Though there is a lot of that in an episode with this much stakes. I actually felt more sorry for Captain Deakins and Carver.
Carver's, doesn't have a lot to do but drink coffee in this episode. But then we always love when there's kind of this unspoken understanding between Goran and Eames, and there is a good moment where the victim's friend is talking about some coffee table that, she got in Amsterdam, and like they went to and you can sort of see like Eames and Goran kind
There's
of
something
looking at each
there.
other.
Yeah.
But let's get to the Eames one-liner.
Right.
So what they do, I feel like, to compensate for that is they often give Eames the best kind of one-liner in the
Sort of
episode.
a
Well, she's
Lenny
so-
Briscoe line.
Yeah.
Well, she's so snarky, right?
Yeah.
Like, she's a queen of sass. So that's why we have the...
Like Lenny Briscoe before her. Yeah.
Right. No, but...
It's true. If you haven't watched the regular
No,
Law and Order,
I've heard about it,
Yeah.
though. I've heard things.
Yes.
So, the Eames one-liner is
Make sure you stay in frame.
that the guy, he says, they're leaving the interrogation room and he feels very misunderstood or something.
Yep.
And he yells, "I was sent by God," and then she said, "So were we."
Yes.
And
Which is a
that's
great line. Which
the best line.
But I take it to heart. I actually believe the pursuit of justice is a very godly pursuit, and I really, really appreciate that.
Well,
And I think she means it, though, because they do drop hints that she was Catholic growing up, and then in the later seasons she does have like a
that
little
medal. Yeah.
cross necklace.
Yeah, and actually that line kind of changed the way I viewed the show, because I agree, like, God loves justice. And you do see, not just in them finding the perpetrator, but I feel like, and I've mentioned this before, it's like God's really using Goran in people's lives, right? Like, there's lots of examples that he literally just saves someone and changes their whole trajectory of their life. So, that is a great, great Eames line. And we also have our fashion call.
The fashion call. Not a lot of fashion calls this time, but I would say a very classic Eames look with the red blazer, and then under was it was an interesting shirt because it was a collared blouse, but with no sleeves. It was sleeveless.
It was a good look.
Well, I appreciated the Eames tank.
Yes,
Showing
lots
off
of tank
showing off
tops.
the
She
gun.
actually looked really nice in that tank top.
Yeah.
I'd have to go with their army fatigues.
I did love
It was
that.
looked really cute, actually.
Yeah, it was way too big. They did look really good with the hats. But how many? I want to ask you guys, how many other cops do you think were undercover there? Well, I mean, obviously they were all
I
veterans,
think,
but
I think many. I think for an operation that large, and that was the other interesting thing was, if you know anything about Vincent D'Onofrio, his first big role was in a war movie, where he played Sergeant Pyle, and so it was kind of an interesting visual callback.
Yeah.
Right? Seeing him in fatigues put me in the mind of the monstrous character he played in Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, and so then to finish off, why don't we do the art, actually?
Sure.
And then we'll...
You keep talking. It's going to take me a while
Okay.
to find it.
So we usually finish off by talking about why this episode is in the top 20. Sometimes we've both picked it in our own personal top 10. This one is just in my top 10. I really love this episode because I feel like I love when they talk about the Bible and spiritual themes, and like what I just talked about kind of changed my view of the show, them being on this mission from God. It was really cool to see Ryder Strong in kind of playing against character.
And we watched him grow up on television.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a little bit different, but in a good way. Like, I found the whole episode, I was kind of on the edge of my seat. There's no filler. I feel like this episode is as good as any kind of movie on the subject, packed into an hour. Once again, too, like, so educational, how much we learn about all kinds of things, right? So just, yeah, bravo.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, when you offered me sort of your list of episodes, and it was my first choice, because I think it might be the best made episode. Now, obviously, there are episodes with a certain Moriarty-like character that are sort of the most defining, I think, of the show, and the most satisfying. But I think that in terms of just crafting an episode, this is probably the strongest one.
Wow.
And so, so that's why and for all the reasons you mentioned, that it is very filmic, but particularly how twisty-turny it is, how it's, one thing leads to another, and just how intricate that web is that leads them down to this mystery, where each impulse they have, or instinct they have, or reflex they have to leads them, to a wider and wider picture. Yeah. It reminds me of, weirdly, it reminds me of the best early Simpsons episodes, where it's like, this leads to this, leads to this.
How do we get there?
How do we get there? Where it's an episode about, a one-off gag, anyway, about a bag of ice or something leads to, this parody of, Citizen Kane and on. So I just felt like it was, that kind of intricate writing. There's just was and is no other show doing that.
So you would put it in your top 10?
I put it in my top 2 or 3. I really would.
Yeah. Again, just like how great season 2 is. So Anna, I know it wasn't in your top 10, but what do you think about it?
It's good. It's a little too intense for me.
Okay.
I love it, but at the and whenever I think of it, it's like, oh, that episode is so good. But then when you're watching it, it's like, where's the relief? Like, there's no...
It's true.
And even the ending isn't very, like...
Yeah.
They just walk off, and, he's still
it does suffer.
Injured. I want him to go get stitches or something.
Yeah, he should have been at least holding his arm. But the Law and Order franchise does lack denouement. Generally, it's a criticism of the show, but this one in particular just felt like... I think you did get a sense of that, though, of just their kind of, like their exhale. But also, I agree with you, Annie, that the stakes are so high. This isn't just like, oh, maybe they'll convict them, maybe they won't. Like, I mean, those are serious stakes, but this is like, could be historical consequences. So
right. Yeah.
And again, no Rogers in this episode.
That's true.
Yeah. A lack of Rogers, a lack of Stearns. Yeah.
And like, we often talk about Deakins, how he doesn't really want to get to the bottom of it. He just wants to. But he's got some good lines, too. Like, when he's like, step into him fast, Yeah. So it's a pretty good Deakins episode.
Deakins is not very patient.
No.
Not at all.
Well, he's very impatient with Goran's methods, right? And probably, I think we see in a very early episode, he's, like, under fire and is trying to defend, the profile, right? Because, like, Goran's like... he's trying to explain, well, okay, the profile, perpetrator would be in this neighborhood, and they're just not really buying it. And I don't know if Deakins really subscribes to that either, but I mean...
But it works every time.
It's very effective, yeah.
And there is an interesting, through line, as much as he trusts, I think, both detectives, I think Deakins and Eames have
they
special...
have a weird, father-daughter thing.
Well, also that he Eames is senior officer, but I think he sort of relies on her to rein him in and also to understand him the way that she does.
Yeah, do you agree with him, or is he kind of off on one of his? Yeah. But I think I feel sorry for Goran, because I just think everyone would rather deal with Eames. Like Carver, talks to Eames too, more than he talks to Goran. So
there's a lot of beef with Carver and Goran in the first season.
Yeah, they butt heads a lot. So,
anyways, time for the art.
Butt on the internet?
I think you're allowed to say that.
I just did it.
Yeah. So here's the art.
Ooh, really nice art.
Thank you. Ignore my phantom art, but we have I liked seeing the sort of go away from it.
He's just helping.
The kind of like what are they called? The like explosive vests. We got to see that, and this is Eames, and then this is them kind of walking off after the whole incident. There's not as many as usual, but that's the art.
Very strong.
Very good.
This was
I
actually
could email
one
you
of the
later.
first
I have in my sketchbook from around this period, I have a drawing of me being interrogated by Eames and Gorin.
Do you actually?
I really do. And I have a scan of it. So maybe she can insert that later
Yes,
through
please.
the magic of internet editing.
Yeah.
Perhaps, but perhaps not. So if not, my apologies to you, my audience, our audience. And, yeah.
Well, and you had sent me this really cute, like, promo clip of, like, Vincent D'Onofrio and Catherine Irby kind of, like, they were sort of being very playful, and I was trying to find
I want
it.
to see that. I want you to find that.
So I was doing a search of just my Facebook messages for, like, Law and Order Criminal Intent, and actually a message about this episode came up because I think it was when it was on in reruns, and I was like, oh, like, such a good, episode today, and then you made some comment about, like, oh, I don't know, like, what you're referring to, but it sounds like a really strong episode, so...
So even then, I have no new jokes. I just use the same ones from 20 years ago. But,
over
anyway.
and over and over again.
Yeah, because I don't know if I mentioned it. He really did grow up on screen, and I mean we watched him. Yeah,
Watch him grow up right before your eyes.
yeah. I mean, more like Suicide Bomber meets World.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yes.
Or am I
You're
right?
so right.
You are right. But just goes to show that the enduring quality of this show that I've been watching it for over 20 years, and I mean off and on, and it's one of those shows I can watch over and over again and never really get sick of. So.
Yeah, force the next generation to watch as well.
I didn't have to watch another episode, but...
Well, we're very glad you did. So thank you for joining us. I know next week we're still going to be in season 2. I think
We're season 2 for a long time.
it might be Context, might be our next episode, but
See me, something like that.
oh, maybe See Me. Yeah, but at any rate, we hope that we see you again next week. Thank you for joining us.
Cha-chunk.
This podcast also has denouement problems, actually.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we'll work on that.
That's right. Ah, my arm.